what are the top Yu-Gi-Oh decks for October 2023?
My guy, not only did we stream and watch YCS Dortmund, we also got some connections to give you the results.
Today, big dog, the Yu-Gi-Oh landscape has completely changed, and I'm going to be giving you the lowdown on what the best Yu-Gi-Oh decks that the top players are playing right now for October 2023. But of course, as always, big dog, I'll be putting personal deck lists on my Patreon for helping me pay my editors. Without further ado, let's jump on in. Bang! So one thing that I definitely have to say about Yu-Gi-Oh is that it is incredibly diverse right now. And to be honest, if you ask me, it's probably going to take a couple of weeks to get a definitive best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, but by then, Age of Overlord would have dropped and we'll have a completely different card game. But I'll also be describing a little bit about these particular strategies' future impact and if they'll last long enough. Right now, I think it's best to talk about the strategies that have had the biggest impact, and Unchained definitely fits the bill.
My guy, the kinkiest Yu-Gi-Oh deck is one of the best.
Unchained is genuinely incredible because it's a deck that can control the board by preventing your opponent from special summoning.
My guy, you already know what Unchained Solar Rage do, as well as DDD Wave King Caesar, but there's just a little bit more.
Unchained is actually incredible at being able to play around a lot of hand interruptions that were used into last format, but now players are getting a little bit more clever. Because so far, while Unchained is fairly represented, it didn't do enough to win at Dortmund and other events. And to be honest with you, big dog, it's not the end of the world, as players were really preparing for this strategy. I think the best way that Unchained can actually address this is continue to do what they're doing, but change their play lines just a little bit. Overall, big dog, I don't think that Unchained is going anywhere, mainly because it is a versatile Fiend deck. Right now, we've been watching a lot of DDD Unchained, but who's to say that Labyrinth Unchained can't be a really popular deck? There's so many variations of this strategy that it's going to be good for the near future and for quite some time. And to be honest, the presence of Unchained is fairly healthy. It deaders away trap-based Yu-Gi-Oh decks while bringing along decks that can manipulate the graveyard, and that's why Tearlaments was one of the most represented decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's kind of crazy how Tearlament went from an underrated deck that I talked about in last week's video to one of the most dominant decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, for the third time.
Tearlament is back! Oh, what a...
Now, while Tearlaments are completely neutered in the OCG and Master Duel, there are a couple of perks that the TCG has that the others don't that make it an extremely dominant deck. One of the biggest things is being the Ishizu Shuffler cards, specifically Ajito and Kelbeck, allowing you to send the top 5 cards out of both players' decks to the graveyard. These two cards greatly increase your chances of hitting cards that want to be in the graveyard to use their effects. Such like your Tearlament monsters, your Tearlament spells, your Tearlament traps, and stuff like Destiny Hero Malicious! And if you were to ask me, Tearlament is incredibly close to modern day Lightsworn, toolboxing the graveyard to be able to summon monsters and get into the cards that it needs, while also being able to disrupt the opponent. And while it may not have a blowout card like Judgment Dragon, it has some very fearsome cards that are incredibly hard to deal with. Cards like Tearlament's Rukalos and Kaleidoscope allow you to control the tempo of the game and get rid of your opponent's cards as well as Fusion Summon. But even if you just so happen to stop its fusion plays, it can Synchro Summon and Exceed Summon. Being able to make Totally Awesome or Baron the Floor is incredibly easy for this deck. Not to mention that the strategy does have some perks against Unchained. Take, for example, the rest of the Ishizu cards in Medora and Kelbeck. Both of those allow you to be able to manipulate not only your own graveyard, but your opponent's. And then the Bestial monsters just so happen to be level 6 to make Beatrice. Beatrice is a card. She's gonna get banned, is she? Tearlaments also are expected to get even stronger when the new Age of Overlord set comes out. The new Horus cards allow the deck to be able to go into rank 8 monsters like the Zombie Vampire to send even more cards off the top of the deck to the graveyard, as well as giving it some more graveyard presence. And to be honest with you, we pretty much expect both Tearlament and Unchained to be really powerful going forward, but one thing that we did not expect is a deck to knock Tearlament out of YCS Dortmund and be considered so strong. Vanquish Soul is actually incredibly powerful right now, and it just might be the savior that players need. Now, the general sentiment about Vanquish Soul to most Yu-Gi-Oh players is that since it came in a deck build set, it would actually need more support to be competitive. Take, for example, strategies like Rescue Ace, Pearly, and Labyrinth. All of those came from a deck build set and were completely terrible upon release, but got better as more support came out. Vanquish Soul didn't need none of that. The deck actually came out of the deck build set swinging, topping almost every single major event on the way to the ban list, and now because of YCS Dortmund, it got second place. I think that means something. We've seen in the Top Cut matchup how easy it was for Vanquish Soul to be able to make monsters like Abyss Dweller to shut both decks like Tearlament and Unchained completely down. But even when a deck like Tearlament opens all of the answers, Vanquish Soul still has the ability to be able to recover and keep playing. There's multiple different powerful variations for Vanquish Soul. Take, for example, the Revolution Synchron route, which can get you into your Raisen fairly easy, or the super heavy Samurai mount, which not only can get you some powerful synchros, but get you into your Vanquish Soul Raisen easy. I think both of those builds are extremely good and have their benefits, but the one that actually got the furthest in the highest event that we've played is the hand trap variant. Being able to play cards like Ghost Ogre, the Bystials, DD Crow, and Dimension Shifter allows you to not only stop some of the top contending decks, but also since they have the matching attributes to your cards, well, you can trigger them for your Vanquish Soul effects. And the deck is also incredibly good at getting into those hand traps using Heavy Borger to be able to continuously draw cards, or when you need it the best, inflict burn damage to make the game really, really fast. In all honesty, this is probably the perfect situation for Vanquish Soul to be in. Vanquish Soul actually gets new support in Age of Overload. My guy, think about it. If Pearly, Rescue Ace, and Labyrinth became really competitive with their new stuff, and Vanquish Soul is also competitive, ooh boy, this deck's about to be phenomenal. Look man, at this point in time, if you say Rikas are a fluke, you're on copium. Rika is not a good deck. Europeans love Rika for some reason, but it is not a good deck. I refuse to believe it's a good deck. Stop the coke, bro. What makes Rika especially powerful right now is its one-card combos. Just one Sunseed Genius Loki ends on an incredibly powerful board, meaning you got 4 other cards to deal with. Also, Rika is versatile enough to be able to put power spell and trap cards that can be searched with triple tactics, thus, as well as being able to use that card to get into your important cards to get you going. And with cards like Joel and Lockbird, as well as evenly matched being played a lot less, Rika becomes a really powerful deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's almost like you can't even afford to play those cards is because the other decks that we talk about pretty much just walk around evenly matched and draw. Ironically, Rika is a huge benefactor in this particular situation. Unfortunately, it does not get any more support in Age of Overlord, but to be honest with you, Rika is pretty much like Dragon Link. Anytime more plant cards come out, they get better. I think for that 5th slot, it's really up to debate, but if I had to give one right now, I would still probably say Fluendaris. Now, Fluendaris still has everything available to be able to stop some of the top meta decks. Access to cards like Dimension Shifter to be able to disrupt the entire graveyard, but even more importantly, since it's a normal summon reliant deck, decks that want to prevent players from special summoning like Unchained, this deck is completely inhibited. And also, since players are using a lot of graveyard reliant cards like DD Crow, not only can Fluendaris search DD Crow, it is completely unaffected by the card itself. Hell, using DD Crow against Fluendaris might even help it. Also, if you just so happen to be a Link-focused deck, Fluendaris does have your number. Fluendaris Impin does prevent those monster effects from ever activating. It's a really powerful, strong, and consistent deck, unlike its counterparts in Master Duel, which pretty much have everything limited.
My guy, birds of a feather flock together? More like pluck your feathers and do what the flu does.
There's also another card that I think is incredibly dumb, a card that probably should have been banned that Fluendaris shouldn't have access to. We already know cards like Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds were completely banned, but why wasn't Harpy's Featherstorm banned? Konami, seriously, what were you thinking? What exactly were you thinking? Harpy's Featherstorm is not only searchable through cards like Triple Tactics Thrust, it can also be set through trap cards like Trap Trick. This card is ironically more searchable than some on-theme trap cards, and to make matters worse, its effect is way too strong. Being able to lock out all of your opponent's monster effects for the entirety of the turn, and the only requirement is to have a Wind-Winged Beast monster on the field? Oh, yeah, you fumbled the bag there, Konami. Harpy's Featherstorm just outright wins so many games, and Fluendaris just seems to be the master of compiling some of the most degenerate cards in the entire game and using it to their advantage. And the crazy thing about that is that that 5th slot could very much be up for debate, so allow me to give you another strategy that I think is really, really good. Branded Chimera. It was really weird that on last week's video, statistically branded Chimera had to be in the rogue tier list, but now with its topics, I think we can move it on towards the meta tier list. There's a couple of things that make Chimera so powerful right now. The first one is that you get the best of both worlds by using the branded engine, being able to summon Mirror Jade to be able to not only banish opponents' cards, but it also puts them in a really tough situation because if they get rid of Mirror Jade, they're going to have to suffer the consequences of losing their monsters. And the second part with Chimera is the actual Chimera cards. Chimera, the Flying Phantom Beast King, is incredibly punishing because it does allow you to rip one card out of your opponent's hand, but also when you're getting into the fusion summon of your Chimera, you put some really good cards on the field in Graveyard, like Cornfield Portal and Mirror Swordsman, to be able to stop your opponent from doing things. Also, the whole little continuous engine of recurring your Chimera fusion to be able to summon Guardian Chimera on your opponent's field, destroy cards, and draw cards is huge for allowing you to be able to keep up tempo, but also deplete your opponent's resources.
But your boy already knew that. I said that Chimera was a saucy Yu-Gi-Oh deck a long time ago. Y'all just didn't believe your boy.
And that is all that I have for the top 5 meta Yu-Gi-Oh decks this format. I want you guys to let me know down below in the comment section, do you agree? Or are there some other strategies that I might be missing? Of course, big dog, you already know what to do. If you want to see more CaliEffect content, be sure to check out these other videos so I can catch you on the next one.